cold hits you before you even open your eyes. It seeps through the animal skins you are wrapped in. It presses against your face. It turns your exhaled breath into a small white cloud that vanishes in the dark. This is not winter in the modern sense, the kind you fix by turning up a thermostat or pulling on a jacket. This is the last glacial maximum, roughly 20,000 years ago, and across much of the planet, the temperature has dropped so far that glaciers 2 kilometers thick are grinding across what will one day be Chicago, London, and Moscow. The world you know does not exist yet. The world that does exist is trying to kill you. And yet, you survive. Not just survive, you adapt, you move, you solve problems, you raise children, you tell stories around fires that burn through 16-hour nights. For thousands of generations, your ancestors did exactly that. How? The Ice Age, technically a glacial period within a longer Ice Age called the Quaternary, was not one single event. It was a slow, grinding shift that unfolded over tens of thousands of years. Global temperatures dropped by roughly 8 to 15 degrees Celsius compared to today. Sea levels fell by around 120 meters as water got locked inside continental glaciers. Coastlines shifted dramatically. Forests contracted. Vast open grasslands called mammoth steppes spread across Eurasia and North America, stretching from Spain to Siberia to modern-day Alaska. You did not live on ice. That is the first myth to dissolve. Most humans during this period lived in the band of territory south of the ice sheets, in southern Europe, in the Middle East, in parts of Africa and Southeast Asia. These were not paradise landscapes, but they were survivable. And survival required a set of skills so sophisticated that archaeologists are still piecing together exactly how they worked. Start with shelter. You did not own a cave. Caves were rare, often already occupied, and bitterly fought over by other humans, by cave lions, by cave bears that could weigh over 500 kilograms. When you found one, you used it. The famous Chauvet Cave, in what is now southern France, dating to around 36,000 years ago, shows clear evidence of human habitation near the entrance, alongside cave bear scratch marks deeper inside. But for most of your life, you built. The archaeological record is full of what are called mammoth bone dwellings, circular or oval structures built from the bones and tusks of mammoths, then almost certainly covered with hides. Sites like Mezhyrich in modern-day Ukraine, dating to around 15,000 years ago, reveal the remains of at least 4 of these structures. Each one required the bones of dozens of mammoths, arranged in careful overlapping patterns to create walls that could hold up against wind and snow. Researcher Olga Soffer, who spent years analyzing these sites, described the labor and planning involved as extraordinary, not the improvised shelter of desperate people, but the deliberate architecture of a community with deep knowledge and long memory. Inside those hides and bones, fire was everything. Fire management during the Ice Age was not about lighting a match and walking away. It was a skill you learned young and practiced every day. You carried embers. Archaeological evidence shows the use of iron pyrite and flint as fire-starting tools, striking them together to produce a spark that could catch in dried fungus or powdered bark. At sites like Hohlfels in Germany, dating back over 40,000 years, researchers found ochre and pyrite nodules together, suggesting fire-starting kits that people kept close and protected. But fire was also social. Around fire, you dried meat, you softened animal sinew to make thread, you pressed resin to haft stone points onto wooden handles. Around fire, you talked. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner, in her 2014 study of modern Juhuan hunter-gatherers in the Kalahari, a group whose lifestyle offers a lens, however imperfect, onto deep ancestral patterns, found that nighttime firelight conversations were fundamentally different from daytime ones. Daytime talk was practical, food, logistics, conflict. At night, around fire, people told stories. They talked about distant peoples and places. They built the social bonds that made large-scale cooperation possible. That cooperation was not optional. It was survival. No single human, no matter how skilled, survived the Ice Age alone. Your group, probably between 25 and 50 people in your immediate band, with ties to a wider network of perhaps 150 to 500, was the basic unit of survival. You shared food, you shared information, you shared childcare. When a hunter came back empty-handed, he still ate, because tomorrow it might be someone else who came back empty-handed. Archaeologist Brian Hayden, who has written extensively on Paleolithic social organization, describes this reciprocal sharing not as generosity in the modern sentimental sense, but as a rational insurance strategy, the most effective risk-pooling mechanism available to people with no storage technology and no way to predict the future. And the food itself was a constant consuming problem. On the mammoth steppe, large game was abundant: woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, cave lions, giant deer, horses, reindeer. But abundance is not the same as easy access. Hunting a mammoth, an animal that could weigh 6 tons and lived in groups with protective social bonds of its own, was not something a single person did. It required coordination, it required planning, it required an understanding of terrain, weather, animal behavior, and group dynamics that represented the accumulated knowledge of generations. The weapons were sophisticated.
excavated. At sites across Europe and Asia, archaeologists have found finely worked stone points, some hafted onto spears, some onto early projectile systems called atlatls, or spear throwers, which effectively extended the length of the hunter's arm and dramatically increased throwing force. Experimental archaeologists have replicated these systems and found that a well-made atlatl can hurl a dart with enough force to penetrate thick hide at distances of 30 meters or more. You were not throwing rocks at something enormous and hoping for the best. You were using engineered tools with calculated mechanical advantage. But the mammoth steppe also had lean seasons, and that is where plant knowledge came in, a part of the Ice Age survival story that archaeologists spent decades underestimating because plant material does not preserve the way bone does. New analysis of ancient dental calculus, the hardened plaque on ancient teeth, has begun to change that picture. Researchers including Christina Warrener, whose work at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology has pioneered ancient dental analysis, have found starch granules, plant fibers, and even cooked grains in the teeth of Paleolithic humans. People were eating tubers, roots, seeds, and berries whenever they could find them. Some were cooking these plants, not just for flavor, but because cooking dramatically increases the caloric availability of starchy foods. You were a careful, flexible, opportunistic forager who ate everything the landscape offered, and you carried deep botanical knowledge passed from elder to child across generations. Clothing, too, was more advanced than popular imagination allows. There is no direct preservation of Ice Age clothing in most regions. Organic materials decompose, but indirect evidence is striking. Archaeologists have found bone needles at sites across Europe and Siberia, dating to 30,000 years ago and earlier. These needles have eyes, tiny holes drilled through the blunt end, through which thread, made from sinew or plant fiber, could be pulled. This is not the clothing technology of someone wrapping a hide around their shoulders. This is tailoring. You were sewing fitted garments, probably trousers, boots, hoods, that kept wind from moving along your skin, the single biggest factor in cold weather survival. A team studying ancient DNA from Ice Age humans has found genetic adaptations in populations living in Siberia that suggest physiological changes to cold tolerance, altered fat metabolism, modifications in genes related to thermogenesis. But physiology alone was not enough. It was the needles, it was the stitching, it was the knowledge of which furs trap the most air. Reindeer fur, with its hollow hair shafts, is among the warmest natural insulators on Earth, and how to scrape and soften a hide without splitting it. Now picture a day. You wake before sunrise, inside a mammoth bone dwelling on the edge of a river valley in what will one day be southern France.
It is cold, but not unbearable. The fire has burned through the night, tended in shifts. Beside you are 7 or 8 people, your closest kin and allies. Outside, the sky is just beginning to lighten from black to deep indigo. Someone gets the fire going higher. There is food from yesterday, dried strips of horse meat, some roasted roots. You eat without ceremony. The day has already begun to organize itself in conversation. 3 of the men are going to follow reindeer tracks spotted yesterday near the river bend. 2 of the women are moving to a site a few kilometers east where they know from last season that certain tubers can be dug up even under snow. The children who are old enough to walk will go with the women. The elders will stay, tending the fire, and the young children, working on tools and hides, holding the camp together. You go with the hunters. The landscape around you is open and enormous, a vast treeless plain dotted with dwarf willows and sedge grasses poking up through patches of snow. The wind comes from the north, carrying the smell of ice. You stay downwind of the direction you expect the animals to be moving. You do not talk. You read the ground, hoofprints, disturbed snow, the faint discoloration of trampled grass. Hours pass. Cold settles into your joints, and then you see them, a small group of reindeer moving slowly along the riverbank, their heads down, grazing. What happens next is not a charge, it is patience, calculation. You and the others fan out slowly, using the riverbank as cover, moving only when the animals' heads are down. One person takes position ahead of the herd's likely line of movement. You wait for the right animal, not the strongest, but the one slightly separated, slightly slower, slightly vulnerable. The throw, when it comes, is practiced. The atlatl snaps forward. The dart flies. This is how you survive the Ice Age. Not by being tougher than the cold, not by being stronger than the animals, but by being smarter, more cooperative, more planning, more memory, more creative, and the ability to learn from people who are not present, people who are gone, people who lived and died generations before you were born. The art on the walls of Chauvet and Lascaux and Altamira was not decoration. It was information storage. It was teaching. It was the accumulated knowledge of thousands of years, made durable against the forgetting that comes with death. You wake up this morning in a warm house. You have food in a refrigerator. You have clothing made in a factory from materials sourced across the globe. You have heating, running water, electric light that eliminates the darkness entirely. None of that came from nowhere. It came from the people who woke up 20,000 years ago in the dark and the cold and chose, day after day after day, to figure it out.